Welcome to the CEO Bros Podcast, After Hours, with Brian Baldoff, co-founded, grew, and sold VHT Studios. Brad Baldoff, CEO and co-founder of By Your Side Autism Therapy Services. Matt Croak, the consummate entertainer, jack of all trades, and serves as our host.
This thing that happened on this recent Bears trip.
The trip you guys went on.
Yeah, I mean, Bright. I mean, we'll tell them about the signs. Remember the signs?
So I get to tell that part.
Well, because you pointed it out by the pool. By the pool, we said,
wait. The fact you said I get to tell that part, I am so invested in this story now.
Right, because this is a national chain of hotels. It's like 20 of us. We're going down to the pool, and on the gate to get in the pool is a massive sign.
A steel, like a metal sign that would cost 60, 70 bucks.
Wait, what city? Where were the Bears playing?
San Diego.
It's probably San Diego.
We were out by the pool.
And it says, if you have or have had active diarrhea in the last 5 days, do not enter the pool. Big letters. And we're like, how serious was this problem?
Yeah, we were sitting there. It's like, you can't get that at a gift bag. I mean, a goodie bag up front. You get some candy, a couple bottles of water, and a note that says, don't do this in our pool. They actually had to invest in like $80 or $90 signs at like 1,000 hotels across the country. I'm going, how bad of a problem was it?
That was a meeting somewhere.
Yeah. That's the thing I always pictured. We always talk about is, can you imagine sitting in that meeting where somebody has to bring up that topic and look for a solution to the problem, and the brainstorming
it's
around.
Like, John, I have a priority that I have to talk about the quarterly meeting today. It's going to be about active diarrhea in the pools. We were like, how do we fix that?
We can't just put a sheet of paper. No, it's got to be metal. It
just blew our minds, because I'm just like, Brian, you know how much that sign costs? That's probably an $80 sign. It's like a steel big sign. And they're like, obviously, they had to go through a sequence of events that led to like, well, we need signs then.
What should the sign say? Should there be a picture? How big does the letters need to be? Should we make it red?
We shouldn't have restaurants with spicy food out by the pool.
Do we put, and if you do, you will be charged. Do we put a penalty after?
Oh, true, right.
After
it didn't say that, but I bet we go back next year.
For our listeners of this podcast, it just goes to show you what happens after a couple of cocktails after hours, the topics that come up, but it's actually hysterical that.
Well, you can chalk that up to communication, which, welcome to the CEO Bros. Thank you. After Hours Podcast.
Nice disgusting start, Brian, to our podcast.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
that.
See how low I can bring this thing.
Today, we are going to talk about culture. No, I'm just kidding. That's a callback. I want to see Brian choke in.
Speaking of miscommunication.
For those who saw the last episode, we started with communication, but we switched to culture, never got to communication. But today we are talking about communication. It's a very important topic. Brad, you say communication is everything. We started it last episode. I'm excited to hear what your thoughts are, because you both are like, this is going to take up, a lot of discussion points. So
yeah, I mean, I can't emphasize this point enough. I mean, whether you're somebody starting a new company, you are running a business, you're running a department, small business, big business, small department, what have you, it's like communication is the bedrock to everything. And I mean, I find myself telling my leadership team all the time, it's like, guys, we cannot over communicate enough. Like, if you think we communicated that idea, that topic, I wanted to go figure out a way to communicate it 2 or 3 more times and in 2 or 3 different other vehicles. Because if you think people heard that message, they did not. They may have gotten it, but they didn't hear it. Maybe somebody didn't open their email. Maybe somebody didn't listen to that call. And if the message is important enough that we're making it an all employee message, or it's something that a department has to hear, it's one of those items that I'm sure my team can't stand when I get to the point where I'm like, don't just check it off the list as we communicated that. Like, I want to make sure that you go back and you ensure the team understands it, because a misunderstanding, a misinterpretation, a miscommunication could be the complete downfall of a company. I mean, it could literally spiral so quickly, and I've seen it happen multiple times. So,
and we are talking, just for the sake of We're talking internal communication. Obviously, there's communication with the customer client. We're talking internal right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't hear anything he said.
No. Just
Horrible.
When you say don't just assume it was communicated, follow up, what is that follow up? They just check in again? Like, what is that best communication technique?
Well, I mean, the first thing I want to say is, like, from my perspective, I take pride and I try to attempt to be the most transparent leader that I think any employee has probably worked around or with. If they know if they know me well enough, they'll know that I am going to share everything and anything I possibly can, because I think it starts with that. Be, as a leader or a new business owner or whatever, whether you have 2 employees or you have 200, be transparent, share what you can with your employees, because they just want to know why. It's not about, hey, I don't want to carry out whatever objective you have, or I don't get why the company needs to do X, Y, or Z. Can you just give me an idea why we're doing it? I mean, everybody wants just the purpose behind what we're doing. And so many times I just find, like, when we just take one extra step and explain to people why we're doing what we're doing, it's almost like a light bulb. I get that. Understood. Makes sense, And so, I just have made it a big point about, we talked last session or whenever it's about culture, it's big within our culture. Any company that I have started or ran or managed a department, what have you, is like, we have to be transparent and we have to share as much information and communicate as much as possible. I think it's critical to the company.
You're passionate about culture, last episode, communication, same, one and the same.
Yeah. I mean, Brad and I don't agree on everything, but communication is definitely key to everything. And there's a lot of aspects of communication, like, between departments, or like Brad said, from the leadership on down, or there's transactional communication, processing orders or doing things within the business. It gets into things as simple as, what are the technologies that you're using? In the last 4 years, we've switched. We're using 3 different communications technologies. We switched one email to a different kind of email. Then we moved over to Slack, and then, Microsoft Messages and Google Messaging, and what you communicate, how you communicate things. Is it text? Is it PowerPoints? My most recent role, everything's PowerPoint. It reminds me back in the day when I worked for the phone company, and McKinsey consultants did everything as a PowerPoint. That's how you communicated. So yeah, there's a lot to this topic.
Well, I mean, it sounds like common sense too. You would think, like, it's like, well, yeah, I mean, we should communicate, but it's like, it goes so much deeper than that, because, I mean, let's just talk about the message itself. Are you being succinct in your message? Are you being clear with your message? Did they understand your message? Because in so many cases, I've seen so many disconnects occur where, when I go back through, I talked about inspect what you expect. When I go back in and I do a deeper dive and find out, well, why did these 5 employees, or why did this department get so upset, or why weren't we able to accomplish it? It all goes back to the root, which is communication. Somebody said something that was not understood correctly, or they interpreted it, or they assumed something. And so from my standpoint, it's always like, okay, what did your message, did you think through your message before you communicated? Or are you literally just trying to check a box? Like, yeah, I got that message to the team, or, yeah, they understood my objectives. It's like, did they really? Did you go?
I sent the message. I'm going to steal the first movie reference here.
And by the way, when you're telling these little stories, here's a good idea. Have a point. It makes it so much more interesting for the listener.
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, a famous Thanksgiving movie with John Candy and Steve Martin.
It's like customers. We talked about the customers, like, yeah, duh, no kidding. But when we deep dive into it, they may not understand what that really means. Same thing, communicate. A lot of people probably go, well, of course. But in hearing you, no, it's not of course. It's more complicated than just saying I sent an email or I communicated it.
Well, you've got a quote. I think what a lot of people think of communication is, I told, I said, I put it out there, but that's not communication. your quote about 2 ears, 1 mouth, I think you've used before.
listen
Communication is
twice
a dialogue. It's feedback. It's getting to an understanding where you're both on the same page and in sync. It's not I told you. I run into so many people who'll be like, well, I sent out an email. I'm like, okay, that's not going to do it.
And I've accomplished that mission because the team knows. I'm like, well, how did the team find that out? Well, I sent them a message. Now it's actually interesting. So something else that I see that comes up in communication is like, I say, hey guys, we got to get like the message out. We're going to start doing X, right? And we're going to start doing X because of, A, B, and C, whatever the reasons are, right? And I see a memo come out or an email or a message come out and like, we are doing this effective tomorrow. No why, just we're doing it. And employees feel like, what's going on? Like what's the new restriction, whatever. Had there been a couple communication lines leading up to why are we doing this? A lot of times it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I get it. It's almost like light bulb. And it only takes like a couple minutes more to do that. And yet people in their haste to get things done, to check things off their list of to do things, they just assume it's like, we'll just send a message out and it's done. And I'm just telling you, it's the root of so many problems that occur in so many businesses I've been involved in, where I go back in and you say, well, what generated this problem with the client? What generated this problem internally? Why did we have this altercation with two employees? Why were they so upset with each other? Why is this employee mad at the manager or supervisor? And when you peel the onion back, it's like, it was a communication issue. It was a communication breakdown. And it's like, oh, well, if he or she would have explained that, I would have understood that. And I'm like, guys, let's just take a little extra time to make sure that the communication is that we've not only done it, but we've done it right. And then we've also followed up to make sure that it was understood, And so I think from my standpoint, it's probably one of the single biggest things that's overrated, or underrated, I should say, underrated, as far as putting emphasis on it. I tell my team literally probably every couple of weeks, I'll say, hey guys, we can't over communicate this enough. It's what's our rollout plan? Like, what's our solution for this problem? What's our rollout plan? What's our communication plan? How do we intend on getting this message to the employees or the clients? What vehicles? How often are we doing it? And people are like, oh my God, Brad, geez, I'm like, we have not told them enough, because I will still go around and talk to employees and it'll be like, oh, I didn't know that. It's like, we sent out an email, we sent out in text, we put it up on the screens, we covered it in the quarterly call. I mean, you just have to assume that people need to hear it 5-6 times before it sinks in. Well,
that's kind of a basic for communications. Is in advertising, I say you got to say it at least 7 times before people even acknowledge or recognize that you're telling them something. It's the same with internal communications. Got to say it at least 7 times, and you probably got to say it multiple ways. Like I'm horribly guilty at. I just love email. Yeah. I don't like chats. I don't like phone calls. I don't like voicemails. I don't like texts. But if I'm going to communicate with someone who prefers to text, I gotta, that's the only way it's going to work. I can't just say, well, too bad. I like the email.
Go ahead. No, do you set that standard of this is the vehicle we communicate, or do you have to find each department head or leader and say, what is your communication language that you like to most be effective?
Well, see, that's another issue is a lot of departments, if you have departments in your business, have their own little communicate. Like the marketing department communicates a lot different than the IT department. So to have one form of communication for the whole company gets difficult, because marketing will be like, well, this is how we do things. And IT's like, this is how we do things. So I don't know if you've run into that, but there's a lot of complexity to effective communication.
Well, let me just tell you, I'll tell you guys a funny story that happened to me, that it's just a simple misunderstanding in a communication, right? So way back when I'm in the wireless infrastructure tower space, we're starting to region off, and we decide we're going to have this golf outing. And it was a big deal. We were going to fly clients in from all over the Midwest region into Chicago. We wanted to make a big splash. We were going to spend a lot of money on this because we were going to pay for travel expenses, clients who were going to meet us for the first time. We had set up the region, so we had everybody flying into Chicago, and it was like perfectly planned out. We're going to have this big golf outing. We have this big dinner afterwards. And we're really going to make a big hoopla around our clients. And at the time, so we're planning everything to the last detail. And so everybody knows like this is such a big deal for us. And near the end of the planning, we're planning even plated dinner. You can pick like steak or chicken. I think it was chicken or fish or something like that. It was like you
I'll have the lasagna.
I'll have the lasagna. All right, yeah. What movie is that? Airplane, right? Airplane.
What was it we had for dinner tonight?
Well, we had a choice, steak, fish.
Yes, I remember. I had lasagna.
So, or is that Naked Gun? No, it was Airplane. But it was let's say it was steak or chicken, okay? And our coordinator came in, and just really quickly, I said to her, and by the way, she's great. She's this coordinator has gone on to a higher level, senior level marketing role now, like 20 years later. But she was a marketing coordinator for us, and I said to her, she just popped her head in my office really quick and she said, hey, there's like 4 or 5 people that haven't given us their choice of steak or chicken yet. And I just really quickly, just assuming that she'd know what I'm talking about, I said, well, you just make sure if they don't pick steak or chicken, you tell them they're going to get sloppy joes and they're going to like it. Right. And I was just like, okay. And I just assumed that it was going to go to those 5 people. But a mass email went out to 250 clients that said, Brad said that if you don't give us your steak or chicken dinner, he's going to give you sloppy joes and you're going to like it. And I literally my heart dropped because this is our first impression. And all of a sudden, bing, bang, bang, all these emails start coming through. Brad, I love sloppy joes. And I'm like, oh my God, they got CEO of this company, president of this company. I love sloppy joes. Brad, can't we have sloppy joes instead of steak? And I was just like, how could we have missed this messaging? This was such a simple message, but the fact is I took for granted the communication of how important it was, the first impression we wanted to make with these clients, because everybody understands what I have to say. And it wound up being a really funny story that I literally laugh about 20 years later, we laugh about this. When I see her, we talk about it, we joke about it. And
what were your responses to the email? You had to pivot and be like,
I mean, it went from just absolute, I am just scared out of my mind because I was trying to make an impression as a director of business development with all these leaders flying in and Brad's telling you off like you are going to get this and like it, but it just goes to show you that if you don't take the time to ensure that your communication's understood, that could have been a mini disaster, again, it wound up being funny.
But no, that's a stomach dropping. Like, are you serious?
25 years later, I still remember that moment when that happened and just how my stomach dropped. And everyone's like, how do we recover from this one? And then as the messages started coming through, like, okay, thank God it was received well. But it's like, that could have been far worse.
It reminds me, and I learned this on very early, that any email you send to someone, assume they're just going to forward it to a team of 15 people. And there's none is like stomach dropping, but someone I wrote, nothing inappropriate, but then was forwarded to 8. I'm like, well, I would have written it differently if I knew all those people were going to look at that. But that's,
there were a couple
that's funny. Our rule was always, it could show up in court.
Oh,
think about that.
Well, think about people that get emails from somebody and they have a long chain within the email and then they forward to somebody else. And then the email is talking about other events or other people in the chain, and that goes out to somebody else.
I've had that happen.
That's written communication, and that's not thoughtful communication. I am like a big stickler on all aspects of communication. Have you proofread it? Do you have spelling errors all over this? Have you grammatically reviewed your emails to make sure it makes sense and that you're not sending out something that it has elementary mistakes in it? Did you spell check it? Did the content come out? Did you read it back to yourself and say, if I receive this email or this message, do I understand it? Do I get what this person's saying? Half the time I read messages and I'm like, this can't go out. I can't read this. This can't be representing our company. And so that's why I'm a really big stickler on communication, that it's like, you have to take extra 5 minutes, 10 minutes and just reread everything that you're sending out, because it's amazing.
Well, luckily now, I don't know if you've seen the commercials, but AI does everything for everybody. So
There's no excuse now for bad grammar, right? I know.
Shitty email and just hit the AI button. It'll make you sound like a genius.
But do you know there was an individual in our space, I won't call the name out, but the individual used AI.
Individual A.
Chat GPT and sent out a message, and it plagiarized somebody without referencing those resources. And the person got let go from their position from Chat GPT plagiarizing sources that they weren't able to use. And so point is that even something that's as technology savvy and helpful as AI, you still have to be careful.
You still have to proof it before.
Because you're saying that wasn't an email, that was a report or something that
something was published that went out there that was referencing something. But it's just the point that I don't take anything for granted as it relates to audio communication, voicemails that I'm leaving for people. You know, you leave a voicemail and then you play it back. I find myself hitting the replay button 3, 4, 5 times so I get exactly what I'm trying to convey. Sometimes I'll listen, I'm like, did people even think about what they said before they left this message?
I usually forward those to everybody. I'll forward those to my team, either voicemails or emails that are like poorly written, poorly communicated. Because voicemail is the worst.
Yeah.
People just leave the dumbest messages in voicemail. So
see the phones where you don't have that option to re-record? I have to be careful now because I'm so used to re-recording. I was saying a message to someone and I was like, crap. And I hit like the pound to re-record. It's like message sent. I'm like, wait, where's the re-record?
Message sent to group. Yeah. Like, wait, what?
And then, then we're on the subject is I was thinking about just the tone of your message, right? I mean, like, I'm sure you've had conversations on the side where you're talking about like, oh, that text read wrong, or like, that's not what I meant, or the email, that's not the message I was trying to convey. And it's like, well, I can't read your tone through that email or text. And now you got to think about
your tone comes through in a lot of your messages.
It's pretty crass. Yes, I indeed. Sometimes I have got to make sure, but that's intentional with you. No, but the reality is that, do you want
we'll screenshot those messages.
Yeah,
we'll put those up.
Yeah, I'll show you.
No. I mean, it's like, do you want this tone?
It's clear. They're very clear and concise.
Thank you. Do you want this tone? Do you want the tone to be positive? Do you want the tone to be very like demonstrative? This like blunt? We're trying to get like what kind of tone are you trying to set? Because a lot of times it's inadvertent tone that you're setting and you don't even realize it. And I have another story that I'd like to share with you guys from a tone perspective. My tower friends from years ago know the infamous story when I went to Kahaken, Pennsylvania, and I met with Kahaken, small town in Pennsylvania. For those of you that don't know, I collect shot glasses from all the towns I visited.
Okay.
I was on the road for about 17, 20 years. I was on the road, visited all these different cities, and I would collect shot glasses. And I went to visit a small wireless provider in Kahaken, and they were going to, when we met, we're all excited because we haven't met these people in person, but they do quite a bit of business with us as a tower provider. And we knew that we were going to have to deal with, we knew we were going to have to deal with a number of different issues. But I was looking forward to meeting them and like starting the relationship off the right, like meeting for the first time and jumping in. And I walked into this meeting and I was about ready to be like, hi, I'm just really excited to have flown out here. I mean, I drove out to rural Pennsylvania to meet you. And the guy just walks right in and says, we are not renewing these 125 leases unless you cut our rates by X%. And that's the way it goes. And I'm like, yeah, hi, I'm Brad Baldiff. How you doing? This is John Thomas. This is Paul, Thomas, blah, blah, blah. Name, here's who we are. And I said, hey, I got a question for you. And he says, what? And I said, can you get me a shot glass from Kahaken? And he said, what? And I said, yeah, I have a shot glass collection. I've got like 107 glasses, and I just need one from Kahaken. I don't know where to get one. I'd like to get one. And he goes, that's an absolutely ludicrous question. Why would you even ask me that? I said, It's just as ludicrous as your request to get a reduction in your rates across 117 leases with these contracts that are up in 10 years from now. And I said, if you had taken a different tone, we perhaps could have talked about this differently. But now that you've taken that tone, you're not going to get any kind of a reduction in your rates. And it was, the whole idea was the whole meeting started on this tone. It was a tone of, I don't even care who you are. I don't even care what you did to get here. I was coming in with like a collaborative, cooperative tone. I'm like, I knew that we had leverage on them. We were going to work something out with them. Maybe we can work some new business together and I'll take some of your rates down. Now, when he started on that front, it's like, okay, we've got you locked up. You're now going to get no reduction in rates and we're going to probably still get new business from you. But you started with that tone. Now, again, you could roll that into it's a negotiation discussion. How do you treat from a business development standpoint? I just chalk it up to communication. It's tone. It's not taking the proper tone in the communication right from the onset. And I find like some of these are just amusing. It's like there's like multiple stories through the years where tone was absolutely just crazy from the get-go. Or they don't even understand misunderstand where you're coming from. And
not only tone in email, just tone in just regular tone. It's amazing how someone said to me once, like, "Oh, I knew
attitude, behavior."
Yeah,
like it's a tone.
Yeah. Even if it wasn't your intention, I remember they were saying, I know you're so busy. I asked you a question, and you said it like this. Like, oh no, you weren't bothering me at all. I didn't, well, your tone was, and I am like, oh, I have to be careful of that. I might have something on my mind, but you absolutely can ask me anything at any time.
Right. Jeez. Well, and there's so many. I'm thinking of all the different aspects of communication. Presentations is probably a whole nother topic. But I don't know why, and maybe I told this story before. I had to give a presentation to like 10 technology guys from Japan. They were in the United States to evaluate new technologies. They all come in. They sit in the boardroom. I'm at the front. They have a guide that's there with them, and he says, "Okay, go ahead." So I start talking. I'm talking for like 10 minutes, and he sticks his hands up, and I'm like, "Yes," and he goes, "Would this be a good time for me to translate for the team?" I'm like, "You didn't tell me nobody speaks English." And he literally translated my whole 10 minutes of presentation, and then they took a cigarette break.
It's like, we have just been talking for the last 2 days, and none of that was
And then his translation was like 2 sentences. You're like, I said more than that.
He didn't say that.
I said more than that.
This is the only important thing he said. But
as CEOs, how do you like to be communicated to? Let's use email. Do you like shorter, just give me 2 or 3 something, or do you like longer explanations? What's the best way people communicate with you as you're trying to oversee so many things?
That's a fantastic question, Matt, because there's only one way that I want to be communicated with, and it's actually text. And the reason is because you have to get your point across very quickly in about 50 words or less.
See, this is why we don't communicate very well.
Yeah.
He lives text.
He talks via fax, and I can't get a fax through from him.
Well, we are talking about this podcast as a business, and we haven't really touched on it that much, but
we're scrambling with communication.
But if we may, we have had
That's
some.
Why we have you as the intermediary.
We have had some where we sent an email with one thing, but then we're texting another. We haven't. Now that we're talking about, we haven't figured out, is our main that email thread or is it the text thread?
It's the email.
It's text.
Okay.
And Brian doesn't understand.
And join us next week.
And Brian doesn't understand the culture we've established here.
No, but that's
snacks.
Right. Right. We had some files come in for uploading that came through email, but we're testing it out. So we're talking
think about the point though you're raising, which is actually really interesting, is that
there's only 4 of us and we can't.
Right.
No, but we have different forms of communication, what's preferred, what's not. And at a certain point we're like, we haven't tripped over each other yet, but it does bring up a really good point you raise, which is like, okay, there's 4 of us, right? And we have different vehicles of how we want to communicate. And because we don't all are in sync of communication, it leads to like inefficiency. It leads to productivity going down. I mean, I'm going to chalk that up to you.
And your emails and your archaic emails.
My long, wandering,
drawn out,
rambling emails.
But no, I mean, isn't it kind of funny though if you think about it, like how just even like, so take 4 people in a podcast setting, which again we don't have, for those of you viewers at home, we don't have that major disconnect, but we have 4 people in a company that actually communicate in different ways, and it leads to some inefficiency. It leads to some productivity being probably not where it could ultimately be. You extrapolate that out to 20 people, 50 people, 100, 500. And if everybody's not on the same page, it could lead to disasters. And so I'm glad you brought that up, because we're joking about it because we can maneuver through it.
Yeah.
We can just be like, all right, we're going to just sync up and get on a phone call and talk through it. But it just goes to show you, even with a small group of people, how that extrapolates out to a bigger issue. And we're talking about, well, what do we lose? Well, we lose some potential efficiency. We lose some potential time, some potential productivity measures. But there's only 4 of us. What happens when you have 20 or 50 or 100 people, you know?
Yeah, or if we each had teams that we had to then communicate with. That's where it really starts to break down, is you have a meeting, everybody in that meeting is supposed to share the message with their teams. I mean, most meetings, I think, people walk out of it and all have different impressions of what was decided.
And you said you like to write things down. You said a couple podcasts ago, if you don't write it down, it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
Because you said people leave meetings and not don't. So your mode of communication is meetings written down.
Do you summarize an email or something afterwards, or no?
Well, this is another reason I love AI, is because you can have it sit in your meeting and do the notes and do the summary, and then I can proof it before it goes out.
Sure.
Because that's been the bane of my existence the last 30 years, is meeting notes. But they're critical.
Yeah.
It's just, anyway. I've had a hard time.
No, but you can see how frustrating. I mean, see how frustrating it can become. And again, I mean, it's a great example you just mentioned, which is just like, okay, this podcast is a newer company. There's 4 people. We have A-Rex. We got us 3, and we
B-Rex, C-Rex.
Baldosaurus. Yeah, there's all. I mean, and the fact is, we have to get communication across in a short period of time, whether it's next recording, an editing session,
which file to upload. There was a disconnect.
And it's like, okay, we communicating an email, we hopping on a call, is it a text? Like, how are we going to get this across? How are we going to review this? And again, in most cases, we just work through it quickly. But we have that luxury when there's 4 people. When you start extrapolating it out to 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 people, different departments, messaging across, it just underscores the importance of communication. And
when is picking up the phone the solution to it? When in doubt, pick up the phone? Or when does that come into play where you're like, I think this is not, we need to.
That's what I tell my kids when I see them in a text battle with someone where they're like, they're just not getting me. I'm like, you can put the green phone button and just talk to them, right? I mean, you could even do a video conference and straighten this out in 2 minutes.
Yeah, you can just pick the phone up and call them. And what?
I mean, I've sat in a room with 2 people talking to each other who are doing this, and I'm sitting there going, okay, you're both saying the same thing, but a different way. Like, can I help fix this and move along?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's what I'm saying is that when you start thinking about like how it can extrapolate out to a bigger organization, every time and by the way, the other thing that comes up with us is, I mean, at By Your Side, we're actually, the autism therapy space is a high turnover business. And it's something that we have as a priority. Like, how do we work on retention? How do we work on employee morale for retention in the space? But from each quarterly call that we have, we've had discussions. My senior leadership team gets together and we talk about our quarterly call. And we're like, the quarterly call is kind of, it's redundant. It's the same topics. I mean, not the same topic, same format over and over. And I said, do you guys know that from the last time that we had this quarterly call, 83 people started from the last time, and no one's ever heard this call and what's on this call. And I said, so it's the first time somebody's hearing this. So not only do we have to go through the format of the call, it's the same energy, the same level of like the detail you've got to go through to explain it. So people hear it and they understand it, because people get into this mindset where it's like, well, they've heard this or they know what we're going to cover, so we can take it easy. It's like, there's 80 people who have never heard this before. And I'm not saying that happens with every business, but it just goes to show you that none of that stuff can be taken for granted.
That's why I said in the last episode, for the first, 10, 12 years, I met with every new employee for the first day or 2. Part of it was to ensure that they were all getting a consistent message and communication. They were all hearing the exact same thing. Because as soon as I would, have someone else do it, they might change a few things or put their own twist on it. And then they hire an employee. And all of a sudden, you're 2 steps removed from the original message. But, it shouldn't be bad, but then you've got inconsistencies. You go, well, these people heard this when they started. These people heard that when they started. And
Wait, I don't recall if you told. I know you told the story, but I don't know if it was if it was just after hours or after hours.
It was
Was it
hours or after hours?
No, when you told that story, when you said just that simple, like, can you put a note on the door? Because there's a client coming to the office, and you said, "Can you put a note on the door?" I mean, think about just communication in general. Is that your assumption was you're going to go put a typewritten note on the door
neatly well presented.
because of the professionalism we want when this client's going to meet us at the office, and you're saying he puts up a scribbled up note on the door that says, "Hey, come through and meet us here," and you're like, didn't you know? Not crooked. And it's like, you're like, I know you mentioned that about expectations, but it's also communication. And I don't mean to put that on you.
I was waiting for you to. I don't know. You are putting it on me.
I don't mean to put that on you, but that is on you.
Yeah. Right. Because he did put a sign on the door.
Because your expectation is that this is going to be a typewritten letter. Did you say that? No.
Isn't that John Madden's famous story where he's where he's just a coach and he's yelling at the receiver, and the head coach at the time comes over and says, "Why are you yelling at him?" And Madden's like, "I've told him 5 times." And the head coach said, "Well, then find a better way to tell him." And that's Madden said one of his, before he became a head coach, he said that was one of the most important lessons he ever learned of going, okay.
Yeah, maybe I told somebody 5 times. Obviously, it's not getting through. I got to figure out a different way to
communicate. It's on me, right? Up and,
you took it as that. I mean, I don't mean to pick on you, but the individual said, I put a note on the door. You said put a note on the door, but you didn't say put a typewritten note on the door that looks like this. It's professional. It's typed up.
Although that's pretty.
I know, but you know what? Those are the types of things, though, that I like to the minute detail. I'm like, this is how I want this done.
But, okay, so under this...
Do you disagree with it?
No, I don't. I was going to give an example. Under this topic, my biggest, pet peeve or whatever. is thing I insist on is exact terminology. Like we use the right words and we use them consistently. And anybody who's worked with me will remember that... was very insistent that, we did video home tours, photography of homes and stuff, that we referred to our work as photographs because everyone would call them pictures. And I'm like, we're not calling our work pictures. Pictures are something you take at a kid's birthday party or at the zoo or at a carnival.
Well, this is interesting.
Photographs are what you get from professional photography services. And so we had signs up around the office, pictures and a big red line through it. Do not use the word pictures.
Use the word pictures.
Yeah, it cheapens our product. And ultimately, we wound up with a small sheet of like 10 things. Never say this, say this.
Interesting.
That's good.
And you said do not use the word pictures, use photographs?
To refer to what we did. We produced photographs. That was our business. We didn't take pictures or pics or any, it just cheapened the product.
That's interesting.
And there was a lot of examples.
You'll have to explain that one to me. I've never heard that before, though.
Well, and a lot of people...
Is the professionalism of the term? Like, photograph sounds more polished and professional than that of pic?
Yeah, you're paying for this. You're paying a lot of money for this. Like, are you paying for some pictures that I could have snapped on my cell phone? Or are you paying for photography services where the end result is a stunning, striking photograph?
Nice. Could be I want to buy from you.
Yeah. Well, and that's the part I don't think people understand is they say, well, what's the difference?
Terminology, though.
But you got to ingrain it in the day-to-day vernacular so that people use it because it does make a difference. When you're talking to somebody on the phone and they're calling 3 different companies and 2 of them say, yeah, no, our pictures are $99, whatever. And our company says, well, our photography services are $149 and you get stunning, striking photographs, Just it creates a different impression, a different perception of the value of your product and your company. And so we insisted on that in emails, voicemail. There were certain terms. I'll bring in the book one day of the terminology that we were very insistent on, because
and you felt it made a difference. I mean, it did make a difference.
Oh yeah, it definitely made a difference. And I would hear it from clients. They would tell me like, "You guys are different. I don't know what it is, but you guys are different." Think about some of the high-end hotels. They instruct their employees on specifically how to respond to questions. like, like a Lowe's hotel or something. If somebody says, hey, I can't find the cafeteria, you never say it's over there. You say, hey, my pleasure to show you where it's at. And I'll walk you over there. Disney does this. A lot of the high-end brands have very strict standards on the words you use, the phrases that you use.
Ensuring that the client feels special, or the client feels like they've been accommodated, or
whatever you're trying to convey about your brand and your value that makes you different, instead of cheapening the brand.
Actually, it's a really good point, because not literally about a week or two ago, before I went out to Atlanta, we were talking about. I was meeting with my leadership team, and we were talking about. Do employees come into our company and understand the terminology of actually how they're compensated? Because we have two rates of pay, a direct rate of pay and an admin rate of pay. And I said, oh yeah, that's the 2-tier structure, right? Everybody calls it the 2-tier structure. And they're like, Brad, nobody calls it the 2-tier structure. And I go, okay, well, I know this person, we call it two. And then it was funny. We went around the room. It's like, I don't call it that. I call it that. We don't call it. I'm like, okay, that's our problem.
Yeah.
And this is pay. We have
10 people on our leadership team, of which half the people on the team is calling it one thing, half it's calling it the other. And the employees are hearing that and going, all right, no wonder they don't understand what we're trying to explain. It's not their fault. It's on us. It's on me. That's the bar that I set, that we didn't set terminology. We didn't set the culture right in how we call certain things. And so I can absolutely I completely get your.
Have you ever seen that from a customer's perspective? That's, I'm a marketing guy. That's where it's really jarring, is the brochure calls it one thing, and then you go to the website and they call it something else. And then you talk to the sales rep and they call it a third thing. It's like, am I talking to the same company?
Well, even in ABA with therapy, so many parents call something regression, right? My child's regressing. And really the therapist's like, no, your child is about to have an extinction burst, about to learn a new skill. And that's not regression. They're about to, but that word can almost make a parent feel like this isn't working. And that the therapist has to reshape it and say, actually, this is what is happening, and get them away from that word, because that word has a negative.
And think about if half of our staff is calling it one thing and half of our staff is calling it another. So it's another kind of exclamation point on communication, and ensuring communication is being delivered correctly, that you're not taking it for granted, that you're doing it consistently, that you're doing it often, and that you're circling back and you're ensuring that's understood.
How do you balance, though, the people who say at work, they're like, I'm in meeting after meeting after meeting all week long, I'm not getting anything done? Well, how do you handle that balance? Or is that the nature, once you get to a certain level, it's going to be mostly meetings?
Well, that's a whole nother episode.
Yeah, that's a whole nother topic there, man.
Well, would that be, though, communication?
It is communication.
Are you over? Is that
meetings themselves?
You mean they're just not getting information?
No, I guess that would be a whole nother topic. I mean, it is another
topic. Is Brian and I know we feel we're very kind of aligned on like the expectation for meetings, who should be attending meetings, and who winds up going to meetings. And you're like,
the purpose of the meeting.
The purpose of the meeting is
I can't wait for that episode. I'm excited now.
It's like there's so many rules of the road I have for who should be attending meetings that will probably make people's heads spins. Because
high level, then, just for the sake of communication, for that question, is it a challenge that it's too many meetings, or do you feel, and we'll talk about meetings later, or no, sometimes you're going to be in meeting after meeting after meeting, day after day after day?
I think there's way too many meetings.
There's way too many meetings. There's a much more efficient
that's not, oh, but I'm communicating. You're saying you're not being efficient.
It's actually interesting. I read an article this recently where Elon Musk said that at any of his companies, that if anybody feels that they don't have anything to either gain from the meeting or contribute to the meeting, they can leave at any time of any meeting. So if you're having a meeting with 10 people and they're like, I'm not getting anything from this, or I'm not contributing to this, get up and leave. He doesn't want you there. He thinks it's a waste of time. And I think that that's a big contributor to meetings being ineffective, is that there's people sitting in meetings that don't need to be there, and there's just not things getting accomplished. So that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah. All right. Amber, write that down. Meetings is going to be on the
Amber doesn't
on the list.
She doesn't.
Who's
Amber?
I'm sorry, Arex.
Who's Amber?
Arex, sorry.
For our post-show meeting today, could you put that on the agenda?
All right. Well, while we have a break,
we our Tito's bottle is running low. If we could get another Tito's.
So before the Tito's runs out, let's get to our notable nugget. this week. Let's go a little off
Hopefully
topic.
Brian's got one because I don't have one this week.
This is
You've
where we go
always got
off
a
topic a
notable
little
nugget.
bit and give an experience words of wisdom. So I think you're doing the notable nugget this week.
I do.
I am.
He is.
I'm actually going to combine my notable nugget with a little bit of show and tell today. How about that? Yes, I'm going to combine two features. Okay, easy.
Hey, all right. Sorry, everybody. I overreacted. What my brother could potentially do.
So I'm attending a.
Now remember, there's a lot of people audio listening, so you have to.
Yeah, no, that's not.
Yeah, so
So
don't
the
do
show and tell. No, do the show and tell.
No, you're right. You're right.
no,
Imagine
point to
if
it.
you will.
No, yeah, explain it. No, do the show.
Don't point to a picture of an apple
He brought a
if you're not
prop.
planning
He
it.
brought a prop. It's a
hamster?
Amber, nicely done.
Hamster's loose.
We told Amber that she can say whatever she wants.
Whatever she wants.
It took 7 episodes, and her first major thing is
that a
hamster?
That is
Welcome to the show, Amber.
unreal. Thank you,
Welcome to the
A-Rex.
show.
We're gonna have a meeting.
Oh, A-Rex. Sorry.
Yeah, we're gonna have to set a culture.
That's
kind
Okay,
of parameter.
notable nugget
So
with
the show is for the video
I'll hold it
part,
for
and
you.
the tell is for the audio part.
Okay,
No,
I'm
that's
sorry.
all right.
Wait, we should pause and let Brian.
Read the book.
Please. So, you guys. So, all right, I'm going to a webinar this next week that Adobe is having. You guys know Adobe, right?
Sure.
So they're sponsored it. So Seth Godin is speaking on strategy, developing strategies. So they sent out an autographed Seth Godin's latest book. This is Strategy, autographed by Seth, and
Could Seth be a guest of ours at some point?
it would
Do
be
you-
great if
do
you
you know
could.
Seth?
I don't know him personally. I've read most of his stuff.
Okay,
I mean,
maybe he'll
if you're
join
not
us.
familiar with Seth, you got to look him up. This,
Seth, if you're out there, we'd love for you to join us.
so my nugget's going to come from this. But they also sent this, which is interesting.
It
For
appears to be-
those of you listening
It
to the
appears to
audio,
be a bird feeder.
They call it an accordion light.
Oh yeah, it's definitely an accordion.
It's an accordion that lights up. Here, pass that around.
Okay.
Oh, that's so cool.
Great.
I'll put a picture of it on our Facebook page or whatever so people
Or
can see it.
is this our way to?
That's just a magnet.
Oh,
So.
is this a way to get people to go to our YouTube page and Spotify and watch our
If
video?
you haven't, if you
By
want to
the
see
way,
that
that's really
accordion
cool.
light, I'm not really sure what to do with it.
This is
and
where
how it
I begin
relates,
with
but-
for the very low price of $139.99. You can have this lamp and the book
and the book.
and a paint job of.
Wait, please tell me that you walk around. Please tell me that you walk around the house with the lights off, like back in the.
Oh, see, that's what I could use it
Hello.
for. I didn't even
Who's
think of
here?
that.
Who's at the door?
He could be a miner from the old days.
Maybe a miner.
So this is kind of Brian. I don't know what's in the book, but I want this.
It's interesting. It's called accordio.
Okay,
and there's
got it.
different settings on the lighting, like when you close it.
I'm sorry for
change the
interrupting your
settings.
notable nugget
So you
because
want
you
that
didn't do
nugget
it. You
now,
didn't do
right?
it to me. I'm
No,
sorry.
that's all right.
I thought it was a bird feeder.
That's what happens. So my notable nugget is from his book, which is, it says, "Don't sweat the clowns." And I thought this was interesting. So the book is actually like 290 different pieces of advice on strategy. Just short little nuggets, basically. It's
Great.
It's a great book. But the "Don't Sweat the Clowns," he gives a great example, which is, say you're having a birthday party for your 10-year-old, and there's some clowns are supposed to show up. I hope this doesn't hit too close to
No,
home,
so
Matt. Sorry.
I did circus clowning. That's a whole other. We won't even.
That was not a birthday.
Yeah, it
the
was not a
birthday
birthday
clowns
clown.
and circus clowns
Yes.
are different, right? Okay. And the clowns don't show up. Are you gonna let that ruin your birthday? Is because something didn't happen that should have. And I know we're gonna have a whole different episode on disasters
and clowns.
But the point is, and they even talk about like golfers. Brad's a big golfer, missing a putt. Are you going to let that ruin your next hole and your next round? So it's the same thing in business with mistakes. An accountant makes a mistake on the numbers, and your quarterly numbers are screwed up, or a sales rep makes a mistake on some communication.
Have his head on a
and
platter.
and the deal gets screwed up. It's like you can't let those things affect the rest of your work. It's like I'm going for my third movie reference here, Spinal Tap, when Nigel's upset about the crackers and cheese.
Who's on to this? Look, who's in here? No one. And then in here, there's a little guy. Look. Yeah. So it's a complete catastrophe.
No, you're right, Nigel, but
I mean,
calm down. Calm down.
Look, it's no big deal.
I'm
Look,
sorry.
it's a joke.
You know,
it's really.
It's just some crack at university,
Yeah,
I mean,
right, it's
I
a
really.
joke. It's all.
I don't want it to affect your performance.
It's not
all
going to affect my
All right.
performance. Don't
That's
worry
the most
about it. All right.
important, okay?
Just hate it.
little guy in this one. There's not a little
I don't
guy.
want this.
I want
this.
Yes.
Don't let it affect your performance, Nigel.
The world carries on. The business carries on. You have to bounce from any issue that you get dealt with. You just got to work through it.
Is that a lesson either of you had to learn, or you've been pretty
over and over?
Amen.
Quickly, any thoughts?
Yeah, you have to move on. I mean, hopefully you learn something from it. Hopefully you learn something from it. Hopefully you correct it pretty quickly. But you see a lot of people get caught up in the minutia. We didn't do this right.
Yeah, we couldn't do this because of that. And it's like, guys, we need to move on.
That's not the most
quickly.
important thing in the world. Yeah, it was bad, but move on. I mean, we've had all of those. We've had sales reps blow deals because of miscommunications. We've had accountants who've messed up our numbers, and we've reported to the bank and investors, and then we have to go back and say, we made a mistake. But it's like, okay, get it. I think Brad's talking about transparency. You say it, you get it out there, you move on. Hopefully you learn from it. So.
I think it's a great nugget. I think it's a great nugget. I think it's a great piece of advice. And again, whether you're starting a business, running a department, managing a company, managing a department, you will get dealt with curveballs. I mean, we're going to talk about bigger ticket curveballs, things that can come at your way that you completely unforeseen that could rock your world if you're running or managing a company, and you literally have to pivot and move around it and move on. And so that's a great, you're going to get dealt with those 2-3 times a day sometimes, and you just have to move around them because the world keeps moving and so does the business.
Well, that is a great nugget. And listen, if any of our listeners, you have a nugget you want to share us with us, and we will read it on the air. And as you heard, we came up with a topic, meetings, that we're going to have next episode. If you have a topic,
I don't know what it'll be about.
Well, next episode. Sorry,
in a couple years.
We'll have to have a meeting about that.
A meeting about the meetings. But if you have any topic suggestions, please also send us a comment, send us an email, follow us, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. And until next time, we'll see you then.
Cheers. Great. And if you guys
weekend.
get a chance, see if you can find the gerbil or hamster.
Yeah,
It was a hamster.
It was a hamster.
Cheers.
So here, check this out. It does different styles of light. This is how you change so there's super bright. Here's the